Welcome, Maggie Kelly. I'm so excited you're here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell my audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am a spiritual teacher and a meditation and life coach, and I own a meditation center in the beautiful San Diego area. And I do some public speaking, and I'm a podcaster as well.
Tell us, what is your podcast?
My podcast is called Life Illuminated.
I love that.
And we discuss, some people's journeys to reawakening. Really,
I love that.
Yeah.
So for you, we were talking a little offline right before we got on here. I have been meditating since I was 5. And my mom, I remember it was a big box. Like you open up the tapes, right? And there's like 6 tapes on each side. And there were guided visualizations and it had subliminal messaging in it, which was really good. I still remember some of them very vividly, of some of my favorite ones that I did as a child. And now my children are doing that as well. And so for people who maybe haven't stepped into that spiritual part of their life, what was that for you? What was that turning point for you?
Well, it's quite the story, really. I have 2 kids, and my youngest is chronically ill. He has cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic and life-shortening, incurable lung disease for the most part. And I think when he was born, it kind of just hit me over the head like an iron skillet. And I really just couldn't find my bearings. And I really wasn't sure, didn't fit my pictures of what my family was going to look like. And I was very, very lost. And I think I just kind of went into this abyss. A little bit of an abyss. And I have an older child. She at the time was 6, or she was 3 when he was born. But I think for the first 3 years of my young son's life, I just was struggling. I was hyperventilating through life. I was living off of a to-do list. I was just frantic. My life was frantic. And I live on this gorgeous piece of property, and I remember not even noticing the flowers or the trees or the birds. And one day I just said, I can't keep living like this. I just can't. I have to do something different. I don't know what that looks like, but something was calling me to shift something in a dramatic way. And I remembered having read a few books written by Deepak Chopra when I was in college. And I pulled one of them out that I happened to still have, which was crazy in and of itself. And I realized that there is a Chopra Center right here in San Diego where I live. So I signed myself up for one of the courses, and all of Deepak's courses begin with teaching you primordial sound meditation, which is a silent mantra-based meditation. And that was my introduction to meditation. And from there, I took a lot of other programs, and then I studied with Deepak for about 11 years before I decided, I'm going to teach. And so that's what I've been doing now for the last few years.
I love that. Yeah, I always say your mess becomes your message. And sometimes, it was funny, this morning I was listening to Gary Vee and Eric Thomas. I posted it on my Facebook today because I was talking about how you become a motivational speaker. And they were saying, well, we're not. We don't associate with that word. Like that's not, and that's how I feel. I feel like I'm a business owner who speaks and motivates people into sharing their stories. But it's never like, I don't put that title on myself. That's not what I am here to do. What I'm here to do is actually help people find that story, that message inside of them, and create a movement with it. And it comes from dark days. My very first talk was at my dad's funeral at 10 years old. And the new story that I'm creating around a talk is about when I was 15 and my mom was diagnosed with malignant melanoma and was given 9 to 12 months to live. And people don't realize that those things were happening for us to be able to do what we do now. I learned so much from those bad, dark days where I felt like there was no answers that even made sense. And so for you, it feels like that was kind of that moment for you of like, I am just barely surviving. And so many people I feel like are at a flat line. And what happens is we start as kids and we're like really high and excited, and then we'll drop on the floor and scream to get our needs met. And we can go back and forth to those really quick. But as we start feeling those deep, dark feelings, we start to go, ooh, I don't want to feel that anymore. So we stop, we shove it down and stop that feeling process. We start to go back up, level. The next time, though, we have an exciting experience, it's not as high because our low wasn't as low and our high isn't as high. And eventually we numb ourselves to be flatline. And so I feel like, so many people are walking around the world kind of flatlining, just surviving, and not, like you said, noticing the flowers and the property and the beauty. So from that moment on, you really just said, I got to do something more for myself. And you had to do some soul searching. If someone was to come to you, because I know you have lots of clients that come to you for this, is what in those moments of feeling that almost like flatline, dead space, survival, what's one thing you can ask yourself or do for yourself to just shift a little bit? Because we know we can't go from like, I'm so miserable, I hate my life, to, oh my gosh, everything's amazing, right? So what's that one question or one thing you would suggest our audience do that could shift them in just a second?
Well, one of the things I always recommend for my clients is really to put in a practice of little tiny moments of being aware. And I don't like to use the word mindfulness because in my thinking, and I'm not alone, the word mindfulness stirs up this idea that your mind is full. And that's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish, right? And what I do first with clients is have them just stop and close their eyes and just see if they can pay attention to what their thoughts are. All the thoughts that arise, negative, positive, whichever ones. And beyond that, on a daily basis, tap into one of your 5 senses each day. Choose one of your senses, whether it's hearing or seeing or touching or smelling. Choose one of those senses each day and just tune in that day to whatever that is. Just to start to train yourself to become aware and awakened to what's really going on. Because people don't really understand or notice even that their minds are going 100 miles an hour all the time, all day long. And one of the things that we seem to believe is that these never-ending thoughts are who we are. And really what we need to start to discover is we are not our thoughts. We're just the thinker of our thoughts. So part of one of the original things that I do with clients is start there. Start to really have them recognize and understand and notice how much of their lives are driven by whatever's going on in this internal chatter that they haven't even questioned. Because a lot of times we don't even question what we're thinking. We just kind of believe it's so. And you could be in the middle of a beautiful romantic evening with a partner at a movie somewhere, and in creeps this thought, and all of a sudden the moment's gone. That beautiful moment is gone. So the idea in the process is to train you to quiet that internal dialogue so that you can reawaken to your intuition and your internal self.
I love that. That's awesome. I waited to do that. Sorry, so I could edit that. For the people who always, I get people a lot of times saying, meditation, I don't get it. I don't know how to do it. I can't shut off my mind. And I was one of those people as a child. I think that's why my mom actually got me into meditation, because I couldn't shut my brain down at night to be quiet enough and still enough to actually, clear my mind or figure out what am I going to intend in this moment? Because there's all this stuff spinning. So do you have some things for people who really struggle with shutting their mind off? What kind of meditation would you recommend them starting with?
Well, first of all, meditation, and this is a real misnomer with almost everyone I meet, meditation's not about quieting or stopping your thinking. It's about just being in a state of restful awareness. So if there is a thought, there's nothing wrong with that. We don't want you to stop thinking, because you wouldn't be able to walk from here to there if you weren't able to think, right? So the idea is that when the thought does arise, that you notice that the thought is there. And from that point, That's where you get to choose what kind of meditation you want to do. You mentioned you do some visualization meditations, which is fabulous. There are singing bowl meditations. There's chanting. Meditation dates back almost 3,000 years. It's not a new practice. My biggest fear is we're going to turn it into the next big fad like we did with yoga and forget that these are very ancient traditions that are just beautiful. And if practiced in a daily dedicated way, can totally and completely shift your life forever. So the number one thing is thinking is okay. When you're meditating, thinking is okay. What we're trying to train ourselves to do is notice when we go from that place of stillness to a thought or to something else, some to-do list or something else that's going on, or noises in the environment. And that when we notice that we return then to whatever kind of meditation you're working on. I teach guided mantra-based meditation. And the reason that I do is because I'm kind of kinetic for the most part. And I have a lot of internal dialogue, and I'm very, very busy. And for me, that kind of meditation works beautifully because I use a mantra so that when a thought comes into play, that I guide myself back to repeating the mantra. So the mantra is my place to land. And the word mantra actually means vehicle for the mind. And that's exactly what it's designed to do. But other people really enjoy the visualization, which is wonderful as well. The, meditation dates back to Gregorian chants. Even the Jewish traditions chant the Torah. We have all kinds of meditative spiritual practices in our culture. All cultures do. So it's not a religious experience or tradition. It's a spiritual tradition. So whatever kind of meditation works for you, the number one thing is to remember that thoughts are okay. And what there is to do is start to notice when the thoughts do arise and take you away. Because that in itself is meditation. That's exactly what it is.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely, people always have these ideas that meditation is something that only spiritual people do, not religious people. But praying is meditating in a way. You're being present. You're clearing out distractions. You're sitting there and being with yourself and spirit of whatever you believe in, whatever that title is for you. But even that is meditation. Exercise can be meditation. You get into a rhythm, like that's that runner's high sometimes. They're like, the repetitiveness of just running and the steps and their breathing. In a way, they're meditating as well. And so I always laugh when people think that it's something else. But if we actually think about it, there's so many times in our daily life that if we can just stop and even breathe and just be centered for a minute, that's meditation. And
that right there,
not overthink it.
That is the key, is the stop. To just stop, because, we typically live in 3 states of consciousness. We're either in our waking state, our dreaming state, or our deep sleep state. For the most part, all of us operate in those 3 levels of consciousness. There are actually 7 states of consciousness available to us at any moment, at any time. But the doorway into opening those other levels of consciousness comes with being able to quiet that internal dialogue such that you can transcend space and time in this moment, transcend all of this world we live in and the craziness that follows us around on a daily basis, and move into a different state of consciousness. And the first state that you move into in meditation, when you do it on an ongoing basis and practice it regularly, is what they called Atman Darshan in Sanskrit, which actually means glimpsing the soul. It's that space between time and space that you can't even explain. It's kind of like love. You have to feel it, right, to be able to understand what it really means. Well, glimpsing the soul, or they also call it the gap, is that space where you're not in the room really, but you're not sure where you are. And you don't know you've been in the gap until you actually come out of the gap. because that's when you say, wait a minute, did I just go somewhere? So you're automatically back in your automatic chattery mind, and you bring yourself right out of the gap. So the key in meditation is not to be looking for those other states of consciousness, but to stop moving and become, there's no other time in your day where you stop moving unless you're sleeping. But even when you're sleeping, you're in a dream state or a deep sleep state. So you're still doing something. So the idea with meditation is that it's really more about a restful awareness. So that if a bird sings, you're still going to hear it while you're meditating. And the idea that you can tune into your thoughts and then bring yourself back to focus, that's another place. So the idea is to bring you down out of that constant state of never-ending stress that we all live in right now, to teach yourself how to calm yourself in the present moment and return to the present moment, because that's all we have.
I do. I think it's funny because I've heard a lot of people judge themselves while they're meditating. So what happens is they're sitting there and they're like, oh, I hear that bird. Oh, see, I'm not really good at this. Oh, and then it just spins out instead of just saying, I hear the bird and it's okay. And then come back and return, like you said, right? Or for me, one of the things that happens in my body when I am in spiritual practice is I itch. Everything, like I'll have things on my face itch. I feel like tears are streaming down my face that they're not. I'm like, I just have these things that happen in my body, right? And I know it's just energy. So, but for the longest time, I'm like, why is it, if I'm sitting in a room full of people, the teacher's in front of the room, she's looking at me. Nobody's looking at you. Nobody cares. And even if you are itching your face, just itch your face and go back to what you were doing, right? But I think the thing is we start to judge it because it's not the way that we think perfect meditation looks like. So I love that you tell, okay, if you go there, just go there, acknowledge it, and then just return back. No judgments, no nothing. Just, okay, that happened. I experienced it and came back.
Every conversation that I have with a new meditator begins with the whole conversation of fight and flight and how our bodies and minds and spirits are wrapped up in survival mode because we're living in a constant state of fight and flight. And it's not like we're being chased by tigers all the time, but our physiology doesn't know any different. Our physiology revs up as if we were. So your heart rate and your blood pressure are going faster and higher than you ever knew that they would. You might be perspiring more when you're under that state of fight and flight. Your insulin and your cortisol and your adrenal glands are all revved up because you're trying to run away from this supposed threat for your survival. And your digestion slows, because if you think about it, if a tiger's running after you, does it matter if you're digesting your lunch? Not a bit, right? So people don't really seem to understand how often we are in that fight and flight state. It's all day long, every day. And what that does is it sets our physiology up as a precursor for disease of all kinds, whether it's digestive issues like Crohn's and those sorts of things, or diabetes, or all kinds of autoimmune issues, heart issues, all of that. Even the hormone that's responsible for anti-aging, DHEA, that hormone goes down when we're under chronic stress. So you ever notice how people who are under a lot of stress look older than their years? That's why. So first, I always have the conversation of fight and flight and the stress response, because what you just mentioned was just great, because this happens a lot too, the itching. Because what we're doing when we're sitting to meditate is we're retraining our physiology to simmer down. And your physiology is so used to being revved up in that survival mode, it doesn't want any part of this idea that you're going to rest while you're awake. It wants you to just wait till you go to sleep at night, right?
Yeah.
So when you are a first meditator, a couple things will happen. Either you'll have a ton of thoughts and what they call the monkey mind and all of that internal dialogue, or you get all kinetic and itchy and you want to fidget and you think you need to move and get more cozy or something. Or you even have those little, those jolts like you do as you fall asleep. Your physiology will sometimes do that. Or or you'll fall asleep. That's another thing that happens, because this is the first time you're really giving yourself permission to stop moving in the broad daylight for no apparent reason. And so your physiology is going to fight you until you retrain your physiology to simmer down. And that's why we call it restful awareness, because you're wide awake and you're fully aware of the bird or the lawnmower or the airplane flying overhead or the motor of the fridge. But you don't need to tend to that because you're in the present moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because sometimes, there are times when I actually do fall asleep. Most of the time I don't, but and so then I always wonder, like, especially if I'm doing so I've been doing this abundance clearing work where she'll bring up a prompt. Do you ever feel like you struggle with money? Do you feel like you're not good enough anywhere that lifts in your body and your mind? We release it, against all time, space, reality. And it's funny because there are certain tracks that I do that I always fall asleep in. And I sit there and I go, okay, either A, I'm getting this at a deep level, or B, I'm tired. Okay, we can just be there because, as much as I run every day, I totally understand that. Or sometimes I wonder if that's a distraction mechanism as well, right? So that's an easy way of kind of getting out and nope, I didn't have to do that. So what do you say about people who fall asleep? Is it a natural thing, or is there something else kind of at play?
Well, for the beginning meditator, someone who falls asleep is just plain old tired. Truly. It's just they need more rest. And that's what I say to them. Listen to your body, because here's how we're going to return you to a state of wholeness in body, mind, and spirit. Mm-hmm. This is part of that process. When we simmer your body down, then your mind follows and your spirit then can reawaken. So that's, for the most part, yes. I have had people ask me time and time again, there's some things that start to come up in meditation. Should I look at them, address them, or should I just ignore them? And what I say is, it's up to you, right? Because you can stand at the threshold of a cathedral and look in to see the beauty, or you're welcome to go in and see the whole thing and the stained glass windows and the beautiful ceilings. It's totally up to you. And we know when we're ready, because that's the whole process, right? Simmering down in such a way that you're listening to yourself again. You're returning to a state of wholeness. It's not like you never had it. It's that you had it, but you forgot.
Right.
Deepak likes to say that we have spiritual Alzheimer's. We've forgotten that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. We're not trying to get spiritual. We're returning to our own spirit. That's always there. And I say this to my clients as well. It's like, the silence is always there. We're the ones who leave. We're the ones who fill it and do anything we can to avoid just being with ourselves for the most part. And we've bought into that as a culture in the United States, especially this capitalist idea that I need more of, or if I just had that car, I'd be happy, or this, I need another degree or a different husband or a different job or a new pair of shoes. And when I get that, I'll be fine. But that's a huge, huge misperception of reality, because that never happens. We're never happy when we get whatever that is we think we need. And that's the main operating principle behind Buddhist beliefs to begin with, is that the idea that our suffering starts here because we're grasping and clinging for something to make us happy, and we forget that it's all right here inside us.
Right. So and that's being caught in distraction as well. I was queen of distraction, because if I ever really sat with myself, I'd start to have the feelings that I've shoved down for so long, right? I'd have to start experiencing what it was like to lose my dad at 10, or to have the potential of losing my mom at 15. All of these things that I shoved down in my early years, I'm going to have to address if I get quiet. Because all of a sudden, when there's quiet, your brain starts traveling to all these things, right? I always said I'd be the worst person stuck on an island, because I would probably kill myself with all the thoughts I'd have and all these feelings that would come up. And I think that just that thought of what that feels like, and you think of it, you're so afraid that distractions are easier. And so that's when we numb out from other things, with distractions, with, you know, drinks, with smoking, whatever your thing is.
Shopping, sex,
exercise,
gambling,
right?
Exercise. Yeah.
It's all just a distraction to run from feeling your feelings. And I have done a silent, a 1 day in the woods, silent day where no food. I only had water. It was in the summer in California, so it was hot, but it was just me with my thoughts. And it was actually a lot quieter than I thought, you know? But I think we're so afraid of that unknown. That unknown, if I let that beach ball up with the emotions that I've been pushing down for so long, what's going to come out? Am I going to fall apart? Am I going to get so angry? Am I going to be destructive? And they're so afraid that it's easier to just stay in that numbed out state instead of getting in touch.
And this is a conversation I have often, because it does take courage to go there. You know, somebody asked me about dreams and lucid dreaming and that kind of thing. And, you know, I had this recurring dream for years about going down this long hallway with like doorways on either side. And I was so scared. I never opened one of the doors. I would come out of the dream. And what I realized was I'm the one making the dream. The dream isn't coming to me. I'm creating the dream. And so what if I actually have enough courage to open one of the doors? Then, so the next time I had the dream, I could feel myself open the door, and there's this beautiful, like heaven-like space, right? So we have to understand that we're in control of all of that. And every one of those things that hurt, that may be hard to look at, as you called it, the beach ball, all of that is designed to further our awakening and to teach us something. It's like everyone I meet is my teacher. Every single person I meet is my teacher. No one's better than another. They're all designed in the grand scheme of life to teach me something.
Yeah. And it's looking at, and when you do look at those moments, like I said, when you write your talk and you find your message, you know, people are not going to hear like, oh, I was straight A's and I was, I don't know, the queen of whatever. And I was this. People actually want to hear your, you know, trauma to triumph stories. They're in that process and they need you to share your, you know, the way you got out of it, what the things happened for you, so that they have an acknowledgement, I'm not alone, because that's it's kind of rampant right now with, you know, a lot of these celebrities killing themselves or overdosing and all of these things. It's people think, oh, well, I have all this and I'll be happy. And what really is happening is those people who are at the top of their game from the outside are struggling to feel like they're not alone. And for someone to share, hey, you know, I'm Anthony Bourdain's and I have all this stuff and I'm miserable and I don't know what to do about it. And seeking out someone that has also gone through that, or to be able to share it and not feel shame about sharing it by just, you know, because there's people in his audience that could have listened and could have heard it and could have, you know, got, oh my gosh, I'm not alone either. If he's feeling this, it's okay for me to feel it too, right? So that's what I say, that you can create your own Me Too movement by sharing those moments where it wasn't pretty, you weren't graceful at it, you didn't know where you were going to get through it, you didn't know that there was any solution, and to then have the solution, to then find what worked for you and to turn around and say, okay, I know these people behind me a couple steps need this story. This story is not about me. These things happen to me so that I can serve these people over here, right? So instead of looking at your mess or these hard times and running from them, if you actually sit down and think about what you've learned through them, what you've gotten out of them, then you can teach it to others.
Well, whenever we're vulnerable, we give others permission to also be vulnerable. And it's in the vulnerability that we also understand that we're not separate. Because it's in the stories that I share that make you feel okay to share. And we have another misperception of reality that we're separate, that I'm separate from you. I'm not. I am you. You are me. We're the same person. We just have a different, as they call it in Sanskrit, anamaya kosha. They call your body your anamaya kosha, which translated literally means the covering made of food. So all we are is these covering made of food running around with the same beautiful soul, right? So I love that. That always brings me back to ground, because whenever I think I'm separate from or better than, I'm in trouble. Mm-hmm. That's when I'm really in trouble. That's when I lose my ability to be compassionate and understanding and loving. And that's when I believe, that misperception of reality is the root cause of all war, racism, homophobia, xenophobia, this whole idea that we need to put up a wall between us because something over there is not safe. It's all fear-driven and fear-based.
Yeah, for sure. Because we all are just, spirit, source, whatever that is for you. But truly, we're all that inside, right? That's just, and if you can see, if you can see others as if that was the case, that's when those things will end. I always say I have an invisible bubble. So my kids and I have an invisible bubble we put up that this is my space. This is where my soul lives, and you can see me and you can be reflected in me, but you're not allowed to have my energy that's in this bubble, right? No, you can't hoard me. You can't, whatever else you want. This is mine. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. So we walk around in invisible golden balloons because what we think is those things aren't going to be attracted to us, right? We don't attract those kinds of things in our lives because that's not the energy we're vibrating at. And if instead of getting into that fear monster and being scared and worried and putting up a wall, then that vibration is at that lower vibration where that energy lives. So you can attract that more if you're living at that level. And so what I say is, live full out, live with your heart completely open, and you'll probably get hurt a lot less because you just realize that everybody's imperfect just like you.
Well, and we're all doing the very best that we can according to our spiritual condition in the moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who walk around with a lot of baggage from mom and dad. And, if you can just look at mom and dad as human as you are, there's a lot of compassion there. They did the best they can given whatever state they were in the moment. It's all good, right? And they're not responsible for my happiness. I am.
Right. And that's where you take back your power. Mm-hmm. And one of the exercises that Bo Eason had me do was to write that story. So I was writing the story of my mom coming to school and telling me that she was going off for surgery and that she was potentially going to die. And then after I wrote my side of that, I had to sit down and write it from her perspective. So I had to really think, she's 39 years old. She's already lost her husband. She's got 3 little kids and she's been doing it alone and it's been hard. And then now she's got to come and tell her 14, 15-year-old daughter that she could potentially die. And how dare I rob my child of her childhood? She's already had this terrible thing happen to her. How dare I ruin it again, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, I had such clarity. And I started crying. And then I called my mom after that day at that workshop. And I just read to her my experience. Then I read what I felt she went through. And she was in tears, I was in tears, and it was a healing that happened because in that moment, and there's some terrible things that have happened to some terrible people. I'm not saying that you haven't been attacked or victimized. However, how you see that in your head, and if you don't forgive and you don't move past it, you're choosing to stay in victim instead of taking that power back and saying, you know what? They didn't know any better. And yeah, there's probably some things I've done in my life now since that thing happened to me that I've grown from and that I'm here to serve others with. And I think that's really powerful, but to really see the other person's perspective from that higher source place, not from the egocentric place that it's all about me. It's really to do that so that you can heal that. So so I have a lot of friends who are spiritual woo-woo in their business, right? And I would ask, in starting your business and in this last couple of years, what has been the biggest roadblocks for you?
I wouldn't call it a roadblock. I would just call it an internal angst for me, because what I do is my whole mission in life is to create world peace, one meditator at a time. And in so doing, though, I also want to just give it away, right? So is it a business or is it a service? And so that's been my biggest internal struggle, is finding a way to have it be both.
Yes.
Because honestly, it's really not about the money. It really isn't. It's about sharing what I know, not like I'm some guru, because I'm not, but because I've had a spiritual awakening and I'd love to share that. And if I can be of service to someone and help them get on the path themselves, that's gold to me. If even just one person meditates for the rest of their life because they had time with me, I'll go to my grave very happy. So I think that has been the most difficult part for me. And I finally have figured that I'm going to turn my business into a nonprofit organization with a board of directors. And I'm going to, that also nonprofit can actually hire me to do certain things. So I'm going to charge for the public speaking, and I'm going to charge for my private sessions, and everything else is going to be for the nonprofit. And all the funding will be donated to a couple of organizations that support Buddhists around the world, namely Campaign for Tibet, which is an organization I've been a part of for years and years, and is run board of directors. Richard Gere is on the board of directors. So that's kind of the way that I ended up resolving that for myself. But it took some, I've been in business now for 2 years, and it's just been lots of trial and error. Right. So, other than social media and learning all of that as a huge, quote, roadblock, the learning curve has been huge. It just has been huge in doing this. And I've loved all of it. It's been exhausting and fun and challenging and exciting and frustrating and, all of it.
Yeah. You want a real MBA? Start a business.
Yeah.
You have to be everything, right? You got to know social media. You got to know marketing. You got to know who your ideal clients are. You got to know some stuff about branding. You got to know stuff about websites. You got to know, right? Because if you hire people and you don't know what you need, you hire somebody and they don't know what you need, they give it back to you, and now you just wasted money because you got what you didn't want. But if you don't know what you want and need, you can't hand it off to someone, right? And I always think it's true. I think so many of us that have natural gifts, I'm very intuitive. So in my coaching, I'm not only just me telling you, things that have worked and strategies and all that stuff. I actually have the gift when I sit with someone to see where they're headed. I get the forefront of, here's where they're headed. And then the steps backwards, how to get to that, is what my brain then kicks in and knows the strategies for that. But truly, it is not me. And I always say this, when people say either you're a conduit or God speaks through you, that is my gift. And to think that I should charge for that was really difficult because it's so easy and it happens instantaneously. Everyone I meet, I will give you so much value. Within 5 to 10 minutes of meeting me, you're in love with me and you're super excited about anything you can share for me. You become my fan in a way. I hate that word, but it really truly becomes, you're an advocate because you see that I give so much value. But it's so easy. So how do I charge for that, right? And I have so many clients that come to me, business coaching wise, that have that issue. Like, this is just a gift. It's so easy. Yes, but it's not easy for others, right? Website design is easy for others. You think it's okay for them to charge, but not you to charge because it's your IP or it's your gifts, your God-given gifts that you have. It's the same thing. This is just the product. It just looks different than if I was to build a website or to sell this whatchamacallit, right? It's the same thing. It's a product. It's just different. So I'm glad you shared that, because I think that's something that a lot of people, especially in this industry of thought leadership, of spiritual entrepreneurs, people who are really, some of their stuff is not tangible. It's not, it feels like it's not packageable, right? And so it can be difficult for people. And I always say, money is just a form of energy. So people are saying thank you by giving you money. I mean, it's just another form of saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate what you did for me. Here's some energy for it, right? And if we would stop making this big deal and, and having our own worth stuff come up. Well, is it worth this? Am I worth that? And putting price tags on each other. Like, just thank you. Yes, I really received what I needed. Here's my thank you gift. So that's awesome. Okay, so if you could go back to yourself 5 years ago, it'd be before you started your business, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Do it sooner.
Do it sooner.
Do it
Yes.
sooner. Get started sooner. Like when that idea was percolating, just jump. Just jump. Just go for it. Because if it fails, so what? But if I end up on my deathbed and didn't ever try it, but it was always in the background, then I would regret and feel terrible in those final moments of my life. And I have no intention of having regrets on my deathbed.
No, for sure. I definitely think start before you're ready. Just get in there. I mean, that's how I learned and have a successful business because of it. And some things when I don't know, and I'm even up leveling in a lot of ways, I just do it anyway. And even though it could fail, great. There's a lesson to be learned there. And it's something, I always tell people, I teach people how to do events as well, because I've put on many events, 1-day events, luncheons, to now a 3-day summit that I do, which will come to San Diego in the spring. So you'll have to get you there. But anyway, it's, one time I remember standing on stage, I was running everything and doing it all because I thought I had to. Didn't know I should hire somebody and whatever. But I remember standing in the front ready to give my offer, but it was at the end of the day where people already bought everyone else's offer. It was my event. And I looked back at my desk and my table, and there was no one there to take orders. And so I didn't do a pitch because I couldn't fulfill it, because I was still needing to stand in front of the room and MC and do all these other things. So I lost about $3,000 that day. And that's just in what the costs were, not what potentially could have been in that room that I could have taken advantage of. But, I knew, I was like, ooh, I'll never do that again. Right? So sometimes when you're attempting something, just know that you're going to learn something from it either way. It's going to work, or you're going to get a result, and you're going to decide if that's the result you really want, or if you want a different result. You can do something different, right? Pivot. So I think it's important to really just take a step, just one, that's all. And then adjust. And then the universe will start taking the steps to line everything up in front of you so that you have everything you need. And every time you take a step, more things will come in. And it's amazing. The faster you step, the more that comes. So I love that. I think that's great. Start before you're ready. Just take that step. So one of the things I talk about is when I'm in those states of fear and about to take the next big step, I reference that I always borrow my confidence from my future self. So some 20 years from now, whatever she is, she's got at least a $40 million company. I call her ELJ. What would she do, right? What would she come to me and say if she was to sit down and consult me on what I'm doing currently? So if you were to have your future self come to you, what would she tell you?
No, definitely get help. Get help.
So hiring people?
Send out the stuff that you don't need to do, because I'm doing everything right now, and I've just hired somebody who starts on Monday to take over all the social media, the podcast stuff, all of that, all of the little nuts and bolts and the details that need so much attention from one person, because I can't do that. I'm very, very creative, and I feel like I can't be creative because I'm so busy in the minutia. Yeah. And so I definitely would say, get help. Get help before you feel like overwhelmed, because I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs in any domain give up because it does get overwhelming.
It does.
it's just, there's a lot to manage. There's a lot going on. So,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I think finding the things that you do well, finding your gifts, and the things like for you, it's the creative piece, right? So and the teaching and the actual one-on-one stuff that you do, that's where you should be focusing your time, not in all those other things that you don't need to be doing, like editing podcasts and posting them and getting show notes and all of these things, right? And it's funny because when you're able to hand those things off, you have more space to take on more clients. You have more space to do revenue producing activities. If you're struggling in your business, it's because you're focusing on things that aren't bringing you revenue. And you know, like I know I'm the only one that's going to sell me. Really, right? So I know that I need more FaceTime with people. I need more, one-on-one time with people. I need more phone calls with people. I need to be doing that piece because they're buying me, right? They're buying my gifts and my services, not someone who's my social media person or my podcast person or whatever, right? So knowing where your gifts are is really important. It's all right. So that would be really important in getting those things set up, right? And knowing that do the stuff you do well and not the stuff you suck at. I love it. Thank you so much for today. Is there one last piece of advice? How can people find you? Tell us how they can find you.
Well, if you're ever in San Diego, I'd love to have you stop by the beautiful Satsang House, which is also, you can find me on my website at www.satsanghouse.net, and that's SATSANG house.net. The word satsang in Sanskrit means a community of like-minded people coming together in search of the truth. And that's what Satsang House is all about. And if you want to talk to me about anything else, private coaching, or be a guest on my podcast, you can also contact me easily through my website at www.satsanghouse.net.
I love it. Well, I'm always going to be down in San Diego. I come down to see my girlfriends, and eventually we will be moving the family down there. So we'll be able to be together more. So I'd love that.
Terrific. And I have a guest house and all of that. So let me know.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in to Transformational Speakers Podcast. Check us out on the next episode. And thank you so much for being here. We'll see you on stage.